This episode is brought to you by the Sasquatch Flag Company. The Sasquatch Flag Company is a family-owned business in New England that builds hand-carved American flags from seasoned white pine. Each flag is hand-built and each star on the flag is hand-hammered and chiseled. No two flags are alike. They offer a variety of flag designs to honor the police, military, firefighters, dispatchers, and search and rescue personnel, to name a few. These stunning handmade flags look great in an office, a studio, the back porch, or above the fireplace mantle. They make the perfect gift for the veteran, first responder, or patriot in your life. Now, I love these flags, and I've been giving them as gifts for years, and I was a customer long before they became a sponsor of the show. I can't recommend them enough. So if you're looking for that perfect, uniquely American-made gift to give away, or if you want to treat yourself, go to sasquatchflags.com and get your order in today. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Stuart Andrews. Stuart is a high-performance leadership coach who specializes in corporate restructuring and organizational transformations. He has more than 20 years of program management experience leading complex projects and large-scale transformation programs. He is the author of The Leadership Shift: How to Lead Successful Transformations in the New Normal, and I am excited to have him on the show to talk about leading change in 2023. So Stuart, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Appreciate the intro.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, and I'm really excited to talk about this subject because the new normal, we're going to talk about that. It's certainly different than what it was even 5 years ago. But before we get into that, I just want to talk to you a little bit about your background. How did you get into program management, and how did that lead into eventually leadership coaching?
Nice, excellent. Yeah, it fascinates me as well because I never, thought that one day I'll be doing what I'm doing right now, and so yeah, it's interesting how things evolve. Look, I first started off as a developer actually. Graduated with computer science, and then I quickly learned that I think I'm a bit more effective and better working with people than I am with computers. So I started to focus my efforts on business analysis and project management, and sort of the way through into program management and leading large scale transformation, sort of transformation director, and working up through there. And I guess as I then continued dealing a lot with the C-suite and senior leaders and sponsors of organizations, I started to look at the impacts of leadership and those relationships between how do you build high performing teams and what are the good behaviors that we need to actually have in an organization. So naturally developed into sort of helping coaching those leaders. And then obviously started to carve out the actual leadership coaching to, focus on building high performing teams and what are the key competencies and areas of, leaders need to focus on to really get those high performing teams. And that really what excites me and gets me out of bed every morning.
Excellent. It's funny. We've had a lot of guests come on the show, and so they talk about the same thing. Is I didn't expect to be doing what I do now,
Yeah.
but I love what I do. I found my passion, and I love working with leaders. And it sounds like you've had that similar journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So excited to sort of add value on today's show and sort of share some insights with stories together that we can collaborate on and look at those learnings and obviously add value to your listeners.
Oh, fantastic! So you've got a book out. It's called The Leadership Shift. Sorry, Leadership Shift. I said I'm not going to mess that up, but I did mess it up. Leadership Shift: How to Lead Successful Transformations in the New Normal. So tell us about the book. Why did you write it, and who is it for?
Sure. I wanted to obviously help leaders in the most effective way, and obviously you can't jump on a show like this constantly. And I thought, well, how do I bring the collective experience over these 20 plus years into some insights and stories that that I've obviously been part of, and the journey that I've been part of, and share those insights with leaders. It's ultimately targeted at leaders in organizations, but one of the Amazon reviews that I got was quite interesting because it was about what I could use this for my own personal life. So I think I think for anyone who's dealing with change, this book can help them out, right? And it gives you a lot of context around, going from discussing things like operational strategy, customer experience, putting, your employees first. And, we talk about terms like strategic use of the teams and how do you look at long-term vision and what actually drives high performing teams ultimately. So I wanted to bring all of that together in some form or medium, and a book was ultimately the right choice here in this example. Yeah, I just wanted to share the story.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm glad you did. And so one of the things, there's been a lot of books written on and a lot of theories on change leadership, change management. But what I love about this one is you're saying how to do it in the new normal, which is interesting.
Mm.
So what does the new normal look like for leaders these days? And what are some of the leadership challenges that we face as leaders in 2023?
Yeah, it's a good question, John. And I think if I start with going back to about 2010 and 11, I was working at a large telco here in Australia, and it started to hit me that I was struggling with the concept of a hybrid or remote workforce. Right, I was trying to get leaders to understand and appreciate the value. There was some unique opportunities where the organisation could significantly cut costs and ultimately provide employees with the flexibility of where they get their work done and how they get it done, right? And this is a topic at the moment. It's quite a contentious topic. It doesn't matter where you look. There's still that sort of tension between those that are trying to say, productivity only occurs in the office or around the water cooler, for example, or and then there's obviously the other side of the argument, which says, no, I can be productive from wherever I work, right? And so, this new normal is all about focusing on the employee. If I peel it back at its core, we've gone from industrial revolution and focusing on productivity and focusing on performance metrics and very tangible business financial metrics to now realizing and still needs a lot of work to realizing that at the heart, at the core, is the employee. And if I can maximize the value of having such diverse, unique experiences, insights at that employee level, and ultimately looking after them from a comprehensive well-being overview, then ultimately all the rest will follow. And so the new normal is about really taking that experience, or I should say, that point of view, with putting the employee at the heart of every decision that the organization takes, and then looking at all the other topics that are evolving, because there's always going to be something new. We're dealing with chat GPT right now. How do we embed that in the organization? Ultimately, again, it comes down to not necessarily the tools and the processes. It's about how do we benefit, or how do the employees benefit with this technology. We're looking at universities today, and they're starting to go, well, you know what, I can't deal with this. That we thought we're going to go back and force them to do pen and paper. We're starting to see universities embrace chat GPT, and so the technology has come, and there always will be something new. But again, it's about, focusing on the employee to begin with, and then sort of, moving forward from there.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you're spot on with where the focus needs to be right now. I think about some of the original, theories and processes and change management all, kind of exploded in the 1990s with all these, leading change and all these, great programs that were developed because the world was changing quicker than the old systems would allow for. And so we
Mm,
had to sort of document how we lead change effectively, right? But we're in a new normal, and like you said, it's an employee centric normal. Employees, there's no stigma attached to leaving a company.
mm,
If you have 6 jobs by the time you're 28, it's no big deal. right? And
Yeah, that's right.
so they're going to go, people will go where they're celebrated, not where they're just tolerated. And so we as leaders now have to create an environment where people can bring their best to work every day and they can achieve their lifelong dreams and also help the company achieve their goals at the same time. It's definitely much more of a difficult process than a top-down managed organization. However, if you can bring all that wisdom, right, to the organization and the decisions that are being made, you're going to be much more effective bringing all that collective wisdom of your team to these. So it's a challenging time, but it's also a great opportunity as well. But you have to realize that things are not the same as they were 10 years ago.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's a difficult challenge. It's not a simple one. And I think maybe in some cases, as leaders, because it's so difficult, we tend not to like focus on it. Like that's just too complicated. Oh, what does it mean? I've got to bring culture into this process, and sometimes it doesn't look tangible. You know, it's not as easy to say, "Hey, I'm purchasing this system. I'm going to deploy it. I'm going to put the processes around it, and it's going to deliver X for me." Right. So that's a very objective way of being able to look at the results of an implementation, whereas when you're dealing with employees and you're putting it at the heart and center, as you said as well, John, then it becomes a lot more difficult to look at what does a high performing team actually look like. What does it mean, and how does that turn into results that I could put on a PowerPoint presentation that I could share to the board, for example.
Yeah. We've been trained in all the hard skills, and a lot of what we're talking about are the soft skills and dealing
Mm,
with people and emotions and feelings. And like for example, in any change effort, there's is a high level of emotion. People
mm.
don't like change, right? And people are going to
Yeah,
resist
yeah,
change. And but an effective leader is going to deal with the emotions of the moment. And these are soft
mm,
skills that we're not trained in. You go to a typical MBA program, you learn about accounting, you learn about marketing, you learn about operations and legal and moral and these sort of things. But you don't learn about psychology. You don't learn about,
yeah,
people and how they,
yeah,
because people, I say often that people are messy and they're going to do things that you don't expect, right? But
yeah,
that's actually normal. and and
yeah,
and and resistance to change and emotional reactions to change are a normal part of human existence. And we as leaders have got to learn, we got to get trained up in these things, because this is really where the rubber meets the road now, and the way in this new normal, as far as is that what you're seeing as well?
yeah, absolutely. And it has to give room for healthy debates, because those
Mm,
debates, they can't sit in a area of it's too complicated or it's too difficult. It needs to be brought to the table and discussed openly, transparently, built upon trust, so that there is a way forward that really drives that employee centric engagement, and ultimately those experiences that then drive high performance.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like what you said in the book. You said that leaders should be asking more questions than they tell, and they need to
Yeah.
listen more than they command. Why is that, and what does that look like?
Yeah, that's a controversial one, but it's a very it's so true, John, just because of the experiences that I've seen, right? So, we've been in organizations where there's that command and control mentality. And unfortunately, without trust, without transparency, without listening to the experts in the room who could be all the way down to the front line, you could start to see the results of poor decision making, executing on the wrong strategy effectively because it hasn't been defined correctly. There's a number, or I should say, plethora of issues that will come from not listening, especially to those who are closest to your customers, right? Those who are really there at the front line, who know what's going on, who know what their issues are. And it could be as simple as empowerment, right? If you don't understand what's happening at the front line in your contact center, you're not listening to what the complaints that are coming from customers, because the information that's coming to you in a presentation, let's say, has, I guess, a hidden agenda, or has concealed the truth then the decisions that you as a leader will make are going to be incorrect and ultimately lead, I guess, poor experiences for those employees, right? Because you have a number of employees in the organization that will say, well, we're not solving the right problem, or we're not focusing our efforts in the right areas, etc. So it's important to actually get the insights from those who are closest to the issue, or the customer insights that are being provided, and they need to be shaping the conversations inside the organization, not the other way around.
Mm.
You ultimately hire, you hire your experts because you want them to tell you what to do, not so that you can tell the expert, what it is that you think is best.
Wow, that is really powerful. And like you said, it's turning things upside down, because it was always, you want to have the right leader, and we have this caricature of a leader that has all the answers, and he's going to direct the whole organization.
Mm,
And I've always thought that you're limited to the experience and the knowledge of that one leader when you have a program like that, or you have a structure like that. But when you involve key employees that are interfacing with customers all day long, and you get their input, you're going to make much better decisions, much more informed decisions, versus trying to make decisions in a conference room miles away from where the customers are, or the actual values added. So we've got to get out there. I just heard the new CEO of Chili's. It's a restaurant chain in the US. I don't
mm.
know if it's over there as
Yeah, I know.
well.
Yeah,
But he's basically making the news because he's spending time in his restaurants talking to his cooks and his servers, and he's asking them
yeah,
what's working well, what do we need to change, and he's making decisions based on the frustrated employees that have not been listened to for decades, and
yeah.
he's making financial numbers by doing it, and it seems basic to me, and it seems simple to me, but it seems to be lost on a lot of leaders today. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we still hold on to that command and control, captain of the ship, I'll give the orders, you listen to the orders kind of mindset?
It's a great question, and I really do think that it comes down to a culture of trust.
Mm,
Is trust actually there in the organization or not? And if trust is not there, then leaders will be protective of the information that's going up. You'll find that there'll be hidden agendas, and you'll find that you can't share the truth
mm,
ultimately, because there's going to be a ramification somewhere along the line, right? And I've been in those meetings many times before, preparing an executive steerco report that's looking at the progress of various initiatives, and you're being told, no, we can't say that, or
mm.
you can't tell the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You just can't.
yeah.
You can't say it's red because of the following delays, or actually that's a bit too straight to the point. No, let's try and rephrase that sentence. Let's try and say a different message. And by the time it gets to the CEO, right, then ultimately what's actually being presented is not an accurate reflection of what's going on. So how can they make the right decisions?
Yeah.
But then again, the question goes back to all the way to the top to say, well, are you empowering your leaders to actually go and dig for the truth,
Mm,
or is there a structure that says, you know what, if you stuff up, if you make a mistake, then you're in trouble. Whether you're impacted financially, or you're not going to get your bonus, or whether you're impacted from a career progression, or whether you're impacted because your peers aren't going to look at you in the same way because there's a mistake that happened in your space. Any one of those, or even other sort of implications come to the table, right? And so ultimately, it comes down to trust.
mm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I think we as leaders, we set the standard, right? So if people fear giving us honest information because we know we'll blow up and their jobs might be jeopardized because of it, we're a shoot the messenger kind of
Mm,
organization, then they're going to hide the bad news, and you're only going to hear the good news, and you never get
yeah,
that accurate picture. So we create the environment by the way we react to bad news, or the way we react to stressful situations. It's like, well, don't tell Rennie that, because he'll fly off the handle, right? So we've just established the culture by how we react to bad news. And so
exactly.
we create an area where there's mistrust, right? I'm
Mm,
not telling them that, you tell them that. Like I'm
Mm.
gonna lose my job if I
Yeah.
share this
Yeah.
news. And so I think if you're, especially now when we're moving so fast and change is a normal part of the way we do business these days, you have got to have an open and transparent culture, and you have to be able to share the good news and the bad news. And it cannot be an emotional reaction. It cannot be a fear, if you want to get the real truth and the real details to make the right decisions. I always tell my employees, don't spin the information when you give it to me. I might have to spin it going up, but don't spin it to me, because then it's double spun, and then I don't know what
Yeah.
the truth is. So give me the truth, and then let's just see if that can fly within the
Yeah.
organization. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a big part of what we need to be doing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there was this one, John, there was this CEO in Brazil who shared an experience with me in the past, and he said, I was constantly getting these leadership status reports that were telling me everything was fine, but yet I couldn't make sense of why there were still all these customer complaints. And it wasn't until one day he took them by surprise. He actually started visiting some people in their homes, right? And the CEO ran a telecommunications organization. And he actually knocked on the door of a few people, and he went in one person's house and sat down and listened to them complain and ramble on for 20 minutes about what was going on. And it was so different to what was being presented to him, right? And he took that information, went back to his leaders, and basically gave it to them and told them, listen, this is just not on. This is the truth at the ground level. And it just goes to the same example you just shared with Chili's, right? The CEO going out to the chefs and asking them for what's going on, and that's the best. It's the best source of truth, right down
Yeah.
at the front line.
Yep. Absolutely.
Mm.
You say the successful execution of a project or a program
Mm.
requires a strategic, I'll put in quotes, a strategic use of the team, which includes employee engagement. So what do you mean by a strategic use of the team?
So for a long time, it was just about, let's just hire and get the skills in. And, again, back to your point about those hard skills, right? You're just hiring for hard skills, end of story. So, you're trying to solve the immediate need. Now, strategic use of the team is looking at beyond that. It's looking
Mm.
at what's the long-term vision for this team, because this team going to come into the organization, whether there's a mix of external, internal, whatever it may be, but they're going to develop a lot of experience working on a transformation. Right? If you think of a 2-year program or a 3-year program, there's an immense amount of knowledge, artifacts, insights, learnings that are going to go into that team. And that team is going to cost the organization, or I say cost, it's actual investment, but ultimately, if you're looking at it from a cost perspective, it could be multi-million dollars worth of investment, right? Then what are you doing with that team moving forward? Are they just, you're going to let them roll off? Are you going to let those, if they're external, those contractors move on and go to another organization? Okay, some surely will, and that's the nature of it. But what's the strategic use, the long-term vision, the plan for that knowledge? How are you going to embed that, bring that back into the organization, make sure there's a continuity succession plan? What does the employee experience look like? Why not look at ways of, you know, um, if you get an external contractor who comes in and really shows you an immense amount of value, why not look at ways of how you are going to retain them for future work or in different areas of the organization? And I mean, I've seen some of the poor, ways that organizations try to do this. They'll just go and say, "Oh, here's a permanent employee sort of type of offering for you at sort of 50% reduction of your rate." Well, that's not strategic use of the
Yeah.
expertise that's been brought on board. So there's got to be better ways of looking at how do you bring back that knowledge and insights into the organization and look after them holistically as well, from, as we said, that employee centric view, well-being view, etc., long term.
I like that a lot. Don't just focus on the now, focus on the future as well too. That's
Yeah, yeah,
excellent point. Because I always think that the future value, an asset brings future value to a business, right? And
absolutely.
we say our employees are an asset. They truly are an asset if they're going to bring future value to your business. But if you don't treat it like an asset, like a strategic asset, like you said, then you're going to think, labor to get this project done, and then and you're not thinking about the big picture, in terms
Yep.
of what that employee can do over his lifetime with the
Exactly.
company. Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. I want to just touch on this. You talk in the book about two aligned paths for leaders, and I
Mm.
thought that was kind of interesting. I haven't seen it put that way, so I wanted to ask you about that. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
Sure.
What does that look like?
I think, for this conversation, John, it's about how do you align the technical competency, that SME domain knowledge of a leader that they're coming and bringing to the table, whether they're coming from sales or customer experience or finance, whatever area it may be. That's what I call one effectively aligned, one path. And then how do you align that to the organizational goals and creating harmony in achieving collective results? So that is the two aligned paths that need to come together and drive value for the organization. There is my technical domain competency, the expertise that I have, my talents, my strengths, etc. But then there's also the areas of opportunity for growth, not just for myself, but also for the organization.
Mm.
What does it look like from an employee centric organization? For the past, we used to always talk a lot customer centric organizations, but now this new normal's employee centric, right? So how do I bring that together so that we have this harmony? We have this uh, single unit, as I should say. It's no longer my team, or my division, or my department. It is one unified organization with collective skill sets working on collective results.
Wow. Sounds like my second book, all in the same book. Because that's what all I talked
Yeah.
about was bringing a team together to, with one mission, one goal,
Mm.
and one group. There isn't an us and them in
Yeah.
that the ideal organization I talk about in that book is that we combine together all of our skills to be able to achieve a common goal. And that was easy to do in the military on a submarine. We knew what our
Yeah.
mission was, like go out there, protect the country, and get everybody home safely. Everybody knew the mission, right? And we were all in it together, right? If one sailor made a mistake, we all die. So it was very clear. It was one team, one mission, get everybody home safely. And then I came to corporate after my military time and realized that wasn't so easy. There's
Mm.
conflicting goals, conflicting priorities.
Yeah.
And like you said, the best leaders are balancing the two sides of the coin, which is competency in their skill set, their expertise, but also managing the team towards a common goal. So it's the two sides of the equation. And if we focus too much on just our competency, then we become doers and not leaders. And if we focus too much on the people side and we maybe miss out on the competency side, we can make a lot of mistakes too. So we've got to, I like what you call it, the two aligned path. It's a very important part of leadership. So I think that's very, it's kind of an interesting twist to that.
Yeah, yeah, but as you rightly said yourself, it's that alignment between those two key components, and the military example. I love that, John, because that's all about trust and unity, right? Which is
Yeah.
that harmony that we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was natural for us. And I don't know if it's natural, but you're locked in a metal tube. You're going to be on one team. No place to
Yeah,
go. But it's
yeah,
unnatural, I think, in big organizations. I think it's really hard because of the conflicting priorities. And this is my department, that's your department. I'm in sales, I'm in engineering, I'm in marketing. And I found that running businesses, it was hard to bring everybody into one team and making one goal because everyone had these conflicting priorities, especially in a big organization where we have a lot of matrix management, and so makes it much more difficult. But it's that much more important when you're in those kind of organizations that you
mm,
get this alignment and you get that harmony. Super important. I love that. So one thing I want to touch on too before we wrap up, you mentioned, I think this is really important, that we have to have trusted external sources of advice if we
mm,
want to lead change effectively. What does that look like? What does that mean? I really like that.
Well, I think that comes down to individuals that leaders have worked with that really bring to the table an external point of view, right?
Mm.
And sometimes because I'm in an organization for such a long time, and I constantly listening to maybe certain people, just by the nature of the relationships that have evolved, there could be areas or blind spots, right? If we lack of a better word right now, but those blind spots can help become, I guess, clearer with trusted advisors, right? They can come in, see those blind spots, and bring them into the picture. And one example of that is just, we touched on, which is how do you bring that trust and transparency? Sometimes it's a bit hard to do that internally by yourself, whereas with the trusted advisor coming from an external point of view can help unpack those challenges and find the root causes as to why they may be lacking trust and why transparency is not, there in the organization, and why the employee experience is not as where it should be. And they would reflect upon that and bring those insights to the table. So I think that's the message at a high level as to what I'm trying to articulate here.
Yeah. Yeah, I know as an entrepreneur, certainly it's a lonely position when you start a company. And I think making sure that you do have people that you can rely on that gives you, external people that give you really good advice has been critical for us getting this company off the ground. Legal advice, financial advice, banking advice. And I think the other side is just having people that you can like a mentor or someone that's a coach that you can say, I don't know if I'm doing this right. The team is sort of over here, I'm over here, and what am I doing wrong? And just having that external, someone that you trust, that you can have that conversation with, so important to get your perspective right, because it's easy to get blinders. It's easy to feel like you're all alone. So having someone from the outside that you can trust and talk to, I think is really critical for leadership success.
Yeah, and there could be like a story or an insight that's provided, John, that then helps the leader just go, oh, light bulb moment, right? And
Yeah.
that light bulb moment will be like, how do I apply that lesson or that learning or that experience in my own world? And that helps bridge the sort of gap.
Yeah. Oh, geez. I love that. And I've had
Mm.
so many aha moments in my life. So
Yeah,
that one really resonated with me, because I've had so many people say, did you look at it this way? And you're like, I didn't think of it
yeah,
that way, and just that one question can cause you to
yeah,
really think things differently. So it's nice to have
yeah.
that outside point of view, another set of eyes, another perspective on a problem that you're facing. So absolutely critical. I love that. Any final messages you want to leave with the leaders who are listening into this conversation?
I think the one key one would be just simply put the employee first and the rest will come. Uh, I think it's important for leaders to just prioritize the employee or holistic employee experience, which encompasses employee well-being, what's going on in their personal lives. Employees that are stressed in their personal lives aren't going to bring their best self to work, right? So if we look after our employees, we provide that full 360-degree view, they will deliver their best performance. And then ultimately, as I said, the rest will come. Those financial results that we're all sort of seeking will start to be, second nature.
Amen. I love that. Such a great important point. And that's like the summary of the whole
Yeah.
conversation right there, is put your people first. I love that.
Thanks,
Stuart, how
John.
can people find out more about you, what you offer, and of course, this book that you have?
Sure. So the book is on Amazon, very easily available on Kindle and both paperback. It's priced quite reasonable. In fact, on the cheaper side, because I really want to make sure that it's accessible to everyone. That's the point. And then secondly, if we'd like to find out more, it's just stuartandrews.me. Very simple, URL.
Perfect. We'll put links to the show notes in the show notes for those resources. And the book again is The Leadership Shift. I said it right this time. The Leadership
Well
Shift.
done.
And we're going to put a link in the show notes for that. Great book. I've been through it. It's chock full of really good practical advice for leading in this kind of new world that we're living in. And I love the emphasis on the employees. I love the emphasis on the holistic well-being of employees, something that is just missing. It's missing, but it's becoming more and more important for leadership now in 2023. So, Stuart, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all of this insight. This has been great.
John, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, look forward to speaking again soon.
I agree. I look forward to it as well. Thank you very much.
Take
Well,
care of
that's
yourself.
it. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.